So my name is Betsy Delavan. The last 20 years I've been living in Jay, Maine, and being either a missionary or pastor's. Well, I'm still a missionary pastor's wife. So I'm glad that you're all here today and made an effort to come and learn. And my goal, my hope is that this will be an encouraging time of how to put God's Word into practical application. It's things that have, transgressed, that's not the word I want, just progressed over the years of where God has grown me and where I've learned, and so I've been asked to share with you today about special needs. I do feel like there's a lot of other people that are more qualified than me, and we are blessed. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, back up. So my background, I'm really thankful for my mom. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and my mom is an amazing woman with young children. And I was able to glean a lot from her. The importance of when a child does something wrong, you correct them within 3 to 5 seconds when they're really little, because if you waited a minute, they would have no clue what you were correcting them for. So I'm really thankful for that training. My senior year in high school, I did voc tech. Half my day was with preschoolers and running a preschool and having learning centers and how that works and teaching that way. So a lot of my early training was with young children, and I really had a desire to learn God's Word, so I went off to Bible school. My intent was to learn God's Word so I could serve Him better in my local church. I did meet my husband there, but that was not my goal. I did have a desire to serve God. I did have a desire to serve God any way I could, and thankful that I married a man that God had called to be a pastor and a missionary. I'm saying all this to just give you some background. So we moved to West Virginia right after we were married, and Dan finished up his schooling at Appalachian Bible College. And in the meantime, his best friend found someone and wanted to get married. So we had to travel to Michigan for a wedding. And we were there several days because of the wedding, and Dan was a part of it. And that was my first real introduction of realizing the importance of training children with special needs. One of the family members had a Down syndrome girl, and it did not help her for her parents to feel sorry for her. It did not help her to go in. They could not go shopping. This was an eye-opener. They went shopping and the child was shoplifting. And so that was my first eye-opening experience, that children, no matter what age, no matter what their abilities are, they need to be trained. Our church family over the past several years have had 5 at one time on a spectrum. We had 5 different children on some kind of disability spectrum, and it wasn't that we knew what we were doing. We didn't. It was that we knew that children were important, and we muddled through, basically. But in all of that, to say that I've also the last 10 years have been working in special needs room. It started out with autism, children that were nonverbal, but they talk all the time. They communicate all the time. Working with special needs is scary. If you've not spent a lot of time with children with special needs, it can be scary because their behaviors are scary, you don't understand them, and just know that that's normal. It's normal to be scared of something we haven't been in contact with and we don't feel like we have control or such. There are many in our church that have the abilities to work with special needs. We have one lady that's special ed, not the she's a special ed teacher. We have several ed techs that work with special needs. So we are blessed that way. In the last 8 or 10 years, God has brought those people into our church family. A year and a half ago, our church put together a seminar on special needs, and I have notes up here from each of these classes. Minister is to act and be a servant was one of our seminars. Sorry, emotional. Classroom management. How do you teach? And it gives you practical applications. There's even lesson planning here. And then our special ed teacher had done one on characteristics of special needs students and strategies to help them learn. And these are different lists of different disabilities and how to help them. So I have those resources for you, and you're welcome to take them. I think my husband got his copy on mine, but that's okay. So I have handouts, and I'll just kind of go over them. Here, I'll give half to the side, and then these are not anything I'm saying today. They're just for your. How many of you know or are involved with a special needs child? Okay. Several of you. So, you've been at this a long time. I hope that this is helpful. We can slow me down because I might go too fast, getting nervous. This was an article that was in our bulletin. I'm seeing a lot of I'm noticing. Some Kids Barely Survive Christmas is a very helpful article I found. The next page is Enabling a Child to Serve, so even children with special needs know how we need to encourage to serve. Disabilities in the Bible, which I thought was helpful because there were disabilities in the Bible and some of those references. 10 things you should know about discipling people with special needs, and that was a helpful pamphlet. Today I'm going to do more of the verbal stuff. The back of this sheet is blank, so you can take notes and it'll be all together. So our greatest example, we know, is Christ. And one of the chapters that the Lord really bumped out to me, just really spoke to me, was Matthew chapter 9. And there's a bunch of miracles here with Jesus. And I'll read this. If you want to follow along, you can. It's Matthew 9. While he was saying these things, that's Jesus, these things to them, the synagogue official came and bowed down before him and said, "My daughter has just died. Come and lay your hand on her and she will live." Jesus got up and began to follow him, and so did his disciples. And a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, "If only I touch his garment, I will get well." But Jesus turning, seeing her, "Daughter, take courage, your faith has made you well." At once the woman was made well. Then Jesus came to the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd in a noisy disorder. And he said, "Leave, for the girl has not died, but is asleep." And they began to laugh at him. But when the crowd had been sent out, he entered and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. This news spread throughout all the land. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." And when he entered the house, the blind man came up to him and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "It shall be done to you according to your faith." And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly warned them, "See that no one knows about this." But they went about and spread the news about him through all the land. As they were going out, a mute, demon-possessed man was brought to him. After the demon was cast out, the mute man spoke, and the crowd were amazed, and they were saying, "Nothing like this has ever happened in Israel." But the Pharisees were saying he cast out demons by the ruler of the demon. Jesus was going throughout all the cities, villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. And then it goes on about the harvest is plentiful, but the labors are few. And verse 22, Jesus turning and seeing. And that was really, Jesus sees us and he loves us. And that's very powerful to be reminded of again. That Jesus showed care and love to all of these people. God made special needs children. They are not a mistake. There's nothing wrong with them. They are just different. I had a mom today. I hadn't been able to talk to her all week, and I knew it was a really hard week. Her son had been on medications that she was hoping would help with his behaviors. He's very, he's autistic. He can communicate, but then there's quite a few deficits too. And she said, "Oh, you're speaking on special needs? Let them know that you can feel that it's your mistake." And that just really got me all teary because her path has not been an easy one, but to watch her has been an encouragement. To understand children and children with special needs, it's important to know about the disability. I had one of the children at church, the mother didn't really want us to know the disability because she wanted him to be treated the same. My point was I want to understand his disability so that I can meet his needs the best. And I think that's what we need to, it's not saying that there's something wrong, there's nothing wrong with them. They're different. I need to understand the differences so I can help them. Realize that every child with a disability is on a spectrum. There are no two the same. None of them are the same. God created them uniquely. We can put them in categories per se, but they are all different even within those disabilities. Down syndrome, Asperger's, autism, ID, ID is now intelligence disorder. It's not retarded. They call it intelligence disorder. So they all are different. And just know the more time you spend with special needs children, the less scared you are of them. And they will actually come find you in the store. Like, had one child seek me out in the blueberry field. And I knew they were on the spectrum, autism spectrum, I could tell. And they will start finding you out. So the two things that I thought we'd go over today is one, how to handle behaviors, and two, how to teach, or the academic part. You can't teach until you take care of some of their behaviors, whether it's they're getting up and running out of class because they don't know the boundaries, or they're making loud noises during church because why should I sit in church? There's no reason for me to sit in church. And so you need to learn some strategies that will help replace those behaviors. Do not take behaviors personally. They aren't there to make your day miserable. But behavior is communication. So that's really important. Behavior is communication. You may never know what they're trying to communicate, but it is communication. Even with a child with some verbal skills, may not have the words to be able to describe what's going on in here or understand what's happening with themselves. And ladies, think about it. How many of us struggle with communicating or being understood or having our husbands understood? So think about it even more so with a child with special needs. They are communicating the best they can, so don't take it personally. I have a whole list of different behaviors that communicate. So we know a language deficit, they will share something. Okay, so this one is not, I have not noticed this in a special needs. This was a typical child. This was my child, and Misty's gonna laugh. A sign of aggression in a child, my child, was he was either tired or hungry or both. And I only have one. Sorry.
That would be my husband.
And actually, many this special ed teacher, she said, Betsy, if he were in public school, they would have probably wanted to put him on meds because they had a hard time focusing. Another student that I know of, he would watch on the playground and want to play the game that they were playing, but he did not, and he was verbal, he was not cognitive developed enough to figure out the game just by watching. But he wanted to enter in, so he'd get in there and he'd play his way. And then everybody get upset at him. So we had to take very small steps to help him understand. Sorry, I'm getting pictures and all that. To help him to understand the game. And there's teaching in that's involved. Another student that we had at church would have really bizarre behaviors, really bizarre. He'd be compliant one minute and not the next. He'd look at you and you'd think you were communicating with him. He wasn't seeing, didn't seem to didn't know what was going on. And he was on meds for seizures. So that was the mom that was uncomfortable sharing what was wrong with him. And come to find out he has low blood sugar besides. And so just feeding him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because I took care of him for several years every other weekend so that he could come to church, because his mom was a single mom and she needed to work on weekends. And so by my being willing to watch him, he got to come to church and hear God's word. So by just feeding him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a half a sandwich between Sunday school and church, he was fine. That took care of all the behaviors. So that's why it's important to spend time to get to know. And what's hard is if we're only having a half hour or an hour a week with a special needs child in our classroom, it's hard to figure out what we can do. Another, you've probably seen it. Has anybody seen this? Or clapping?
The clapping. Yeah.
Clapping, that's a tick. That communicates. The student that I worked with that did this, it was more like this. And that's a comfort thing. And he did it when he was excited, which could be a happy excited or an upset excited. But he did it, or a blocked goal that he didn't want to do because he was nonverbal. And but he talked to me all the time. You know. So another young man that we have at church, he's grown so much, and his mom goes, "Oh, you can use him as an example." Now I gotta remember what he wrote down. Oh, his parents. He didn't get diagnosed with Asperger's until like he was 10. But I met him when he was 2, and I knew there was something different. And I had him in my Sunday school class. But his mom told me it took them a year or more, and this is a parent, to figure out what would cause a meltdown. You know, that crying that is excessive, and you've probably all heard it, and you wonder what it is. It's a meltdown, what we term as a meltdown. And it was excessive noises or overstimulation from a crowd. And so he would need to have his own space. So it took them as parents, one-on-one with this child, to realize that that's what was one of his triggers for a meltdown. Remember, also, you can't take behavior personally. Remember that. It's really hard because our emotions get kicked in, and you know, we've been saying the same thing to that child 4 times, and you feel like they're not getting it. Know that it takes time to know a child. Know that light, sound, activity, smells, schedule changes, hunger, these all can affect a child, any child, but they especially affect a special needs child. I didn't say this, but a special needs child is more like you than they're not. They have emotions, they just show them really extreme. They have a body, they have arms, legs. So a special needs child is more like you than not. They just have some areas that need more help with growth or change. Okay. Behavior isn't something that, another thing to realize, behavior isn't something that you can necessarily discipline out of them. A child flapping their hands is not doing it because they're trying to be naughty. It's part of their makeup. They can maybe work on doing a different substitute behavior for that. If you want to get rid of the hand flapping, I'm not qualified to figure that out, but there are ways to replace behaviors, but just know that not all behaviors can be disciplined out. You need to replace behavior with something else. So, and for that student that melts down with loud noises, when there's loud noises, they just need to leave. There might need to be in your classroom. We have right now our young man, the young boy, he's 14, that's autistic. Sometimes he's not ready to come in and sit down, and he can go. We have a taped out spot for him to stay in because we don't want him traveling all over the kitchen and looking in every cupboard. But we have a taped off spot. He has a chair. He has a little basket with different things in it that he can squish or play with or whatever. And when he needs a break, it's not really a break like he's been naughty. It's I need space. So if he needs space, he has a place to go. And sometimes that's what you need to offer for a child that's getting too wound up in a classroom setting, is maybe they just need your helper to go out and they just need to go for a walk. And that's a good thing. Remember, another really key thing is if a child is in the middle of a meltdown, they do not hear you. They do not hear you. You can't reason with them. And most special needs children are not typical that way. You can't tell them why they can't go on the road. But you can't reason with them. So if you put the word wait, the asterisk for that is, why am I talking? So if you're trying to talk when a child is having a meltdown, waiting is your friend, and ask yourself, why am I talking if you are talking? Because they won't hear you. You have to wait until they calm down, and then you can focus. Think about it, ladies. If you're upset with your husband or your child, are you really in a position to listen? Or your brother or sister or whatever. You don't. So it's even more so for a special needs child if they're upset. So now I'm going to switch to the how to teach, which I'm not going to give you too many how-tos because it's all unique. But definitely if you're in a teaching position, you want to have a helper, and that helper can kind of guide. Right now, I was fine teaching 2s and 3s, but we have a special needs child in our 2s and 3s class. She's now 5, but when I was teaching it when she was 2 and 3, I needed someone to be in our room that could do hand over hand with her because she didn't know how to do the actions. I just needed someone to do hand over hand, and so that she could be a part of the songs. So it's really important to have a helper that can come alongside that student and kind of redirect, not talk, but just to redirect them. And it comes back to knowing your student. A lot of my 2s and 3s training actually helped me when I ended up working with special needs children. I'm not saying that they were 2 and 3. I'm just saying a lot of the ways that a 2 and 3-year-old learns is a lot how many of our special needs. They need it to be concrete. They need to be able to touch. They need to be able to see. Abstracts are really, really hard. They need to learn many of them need to learn by little increments, especially your very severe special needs children. Learning might need to be repeated over and over and over and over. How many of you have taught 4s and 5s or 2s and 3s? So you can sing songs with 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. Sometimes they'll do the actions, sometimes they'll do the singing, but they don't often do the two together. And then you find out from their mother that they've been singing the song that you sang to them at home. And quite often we don't see the results of what we're doing with these children for a long time. So I'm just, this young man who is now almost 20 and going off to college, Eli, I had him when he was 2. I very quickly learned that for Eli to learn, if I had a Bible song, if I had a Bible story and song, he knew the story just like that. The other thing I did for him was flannel graph. I hadn't been using flannel graph every week, but once he started coming to my Sunday school class regularly, I really needed to use the flannel graph because then he had stuff to put on and he saw the physical story. He just didn't hear about it, it made it more concrete. You might need to modify reading. Even your typical children can struggle with reading. My daughter is teaching the juniors right now, and there's such a range of abilities with language skills and everything. So some of the ways she adjusts her classroom is by having choral reading. So if they're going to read a Bible verse for memory or whatever, they read it together. So the ones that are struggling with it they don't as noticeable. They can hide under the rug a little bit. Crafts, consider the motor skills. Quite often children with autism or ID really struggle with fine motor, and you could have a meltdown from that. I know that from experience. And throw it, throw the scissors or whatever. And so you might need to pre-cut things for them for their crafts, but that would be then they'd still be able to incorporate being able to do that. Games you might need to modify depending on their physical ability, but still figure out what they can do. Some other strategies that I found really helpful. How am I doing on time? I am like way ahead. Okay, so Andrea, would you be willing to be my sidekick for a minute? Sure. I want to demonstrate this to you because this was one of the most revelating things to me when I started working with children with autism, but it works for young children. I wouldn't do it on older, but and then we'll practice on each other. So say you have a child and they're talking, and you just take their hand and just bring it up to your eyes and look. She's looking at me. Try it sometime. Take your child's hand, and you want their attention because you're saying, Nathan, 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 Nathan. If you just go like this, he's going to look at you, or she's going to look at you. Thank you, Andrea. So everybody practice. Turn to a neighbor, take their hand, and try it. But isn't that simple? That's so simple. Yeah, just
typically when he's angry, he's on the floor crying. So
you do.
It'd be the weight thing that she went over.
Yeah, the weight thing. Okay. The other thing, especially if a child is nonverbal that you're with, and you're giving instructions, keep them very, very short. Keep your language short. So, say you're teaching them, you want them to ask for help, because sometimes children with special needs do not know how to ask for help. And that was one thing that we had to teach at school was, so if you see them struggling, one of the things you can say is, help. And I just give them the word. I don't even say, hey, just ask for help, or, oh, just say, help, or help please. And quite often, after a while, they'll start saying help, and then once they can, they'll say help please. So you want to model those words for them, and that's a lot of it too, is modeling how to say things. The other thing is visual cues. Children with language deficits and all that, visuals are very helpful, because I found that I talk to my kids to death. In the program I was in, I actually had to help with toileting, and one child I took to the bathroom, well, he went to the bathroom 9 times a day because they were trying to potty train him, and so half of those were my times taking into the bathroom. And do you know, I talk to my kids to death, because when you take an autistic child and you're trying to potty train them, you do not tell them what to do. Verbal cues are very hard to get rid of. So the child will just stand there and wait for you to tell them to pull down their pants. So you don't tell them to pull down their pants, because you don't want them to be dependent on your words. You want them to have the motor memory to do this. That's how extreme I worked with. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I could have had a conversation with my child instead of telling them how to go to the bathroom. You need to tell them, pull down your pants. Okay, now sit on the potty. Okay, now get your toilet paper. Okay, now wipe. Okay, now flush, pull up your pants. Okay, now flush the toilet. Okay, now wash your hands. You don't have to say a thing. You can just point. If they're struggling with their pants, you can do hand over hand and help them, because you want them to get I had to do that with one of the students that we had at church. He'd go, my pants, help me with my pants. I said, oh, you're doing great. But, because I wanted him to have the independence. So, pointing and hand over hand at first are wonderful tools. You can do the whole bathroom routine just with pointing. And you can talk about other things, like, oh, I love your red shirt, and oh, isn't it a pretty day outside? You learn to have very good one-sided conversations as a person that's with someone that's nonverbal. It's scary to have a conversation with someone that's not verbal. Like, how do you talk to them? Like, what do you say? And that comes with time and getting more comfortable with them. Oh, look, it's a beautiful day. Isn't it sunny out? You don't ask them questions about themselves. You just carry on conversation, but you don't ask them, so how are you today? And what are you doing today? And blah, 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 blah. You just talk about things that are happening. Oh, look, there's a robin over there. Isn't his tummy pretty red? And so visual cues are very helpful. Keep instructions short if it's especially if it's nonverbal. Hold your hand to the eye to get it attention, and then wait. If you have a child that is verbal, but they quite often children take a long time to process. At school, some of our higher functioning autistic children, you would have to wait 30 seconds or more when you ask them something. And you will start to feel really uncomfortable to wait for them to answer. But ask them. If they are capable of talking, ask them and wait. Some other kids might try to pipe in, but ask them and wait. You will be more uncomfortable than they will. They might not even answer the question the right way, but you got a response, and then you can talk. You can say, oh yeah, that's part of it. You often won't see results for a long time, and you feel like it's never going to change or they're never going to learn. So here's a helpful exercise. Write down where that person is right now, or that young child. How many meltdowns a day are they having? How many times are they hitting? How many times are they pounding? How many times are they spilling things? Or where are they verbally? How many words can they say? What are the words they can say? How are they interacting with mom and dad? How are they interacting with their brother or sister? How are they interacting with their peers at church? Write down all the things right now of where they are. And then put it aside in a safe spot that you will remember. And then 6 months to a year later, go back and look and see those changes, and you will see change. You will. And it will encourage you. Understanding is the key of knowing them, and it takes time. It's a process. I didn't end up working with special needs all at once. It's been a long process, and in fact I'm getting tired, and so I moved out of working with special needs children and with the typical, and they're almost as needy as the special needs. God made them as they are. They're not a mistake. God knows them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just different. It's an opportunity for all of us to grow and demonstrate Christ. They need Christ. Their parents need a break. I used to think that, in talking to this mom this morning, I said, if I had had a child with autism, I would have needed help. I wouldn't have known what I'm doing. And even now that I know what I'm kind of doing, I would still have needed outside help. So don't be afraid to use those resources that our country has. We had a friend, that were afraid to check into the school system. And really, they have mandated laws, and they usually want the best for the children. So it is very helpful to get outside help. And I can't imagine the student that I started on 10 years ago. Before I was on him, I saw whoever was on him looked exhausted, and he was nonverbal. He very busy. He flapped. He hit, sometimes up to 175 times a day. But not all hitting. Any tapping you count. He was exhausting because he was slow until he moved. He gave you the appearance of being slow until he wanted to move, and you had to have those quick twitch muscles to block him from bolting because he was a bolter. And I'm just saying all that he did grow. He did learn to verbally say words, and he learned sign language, and he learned to use the bathroom after 2 years. And what motivated him was the iPad. So when he went to the bathroom, he got the iPad, and it was kind of gross. He sat on the potty and did his iPad, and but that worked. And so does anybody have any questions? Or I'm definitely not an expert, but these are things. It's taken me a while to get them out onto paper, all the things that I do, because you don't realize the resources you have in your brain until you start having to write them down. And, yes.
When you have a child with different disabilities that's in a class with other kids, how do you minimize distraction? Like a Sunday school class, how do you minimize distraction if they have noises that they make, which are normal, and it's fine if they need to make those noises, right. And they're able to sit, but maybe that's just kind of a how do you?
Oh.
Is there a way to do that? Do you just ignore the sound? Do you say, can you not make a sound?
They won't know
Yeah.
to stop. That's
right.
the thing. If you see, we haven't had a child that's been noisy in Sunday school. We have at school, there's even typical kids that make noises all the time. So I guess I would focus more on what everyone's doing and not worry about that so much.
Yeah.
And the kids get pretty used to it anyway. We have I'm in a ed tech position, in an elementary school right now, and we just had a child transfer from New Jersey who is autistic. So, why am I saying this? I know there was gold. The teacher was like, well, how do I explain this to the kids? And we basically said, they'll figure it out. They will include her, whatever. The one thing I will tell you is that if the children are doing something wrong, running across we have a play set that has wood chips, and the rule is for second grade and under, they cannot run on the wood chips. And if they're running on the wood chips, she's going to run on the wood chips, and she's going to think that's okay. So it's basically saying, okay, now what you do, she's going to do. She's also echolale, so she'll repeat things that you say. Like if I want her to say something, I just say it, and she'll say it back to me. Yes, please. Yes, please. So, yeah. That was a good question, and I don't have all the answers. There are resources on YouTube. I know, I don't believe in Skinner, yet a lot of this increment teaching, ABA, behavior analysis, does work for children with autism to help them to make small increment steps of learning. And the basic thing with behavior analysis is it does not reach the heart. So it does help with the behaviors and changing behavior, but it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go to the heart, and that's what you want to change is the heart. So any other questions?
This isn't a question. My daughter has an autistic son. Not a bad one, just borderline kind. And it wasn't noticeable. And he was probably 5 when they realized that he was something. She had to fight for services because the doctors didn't really want to label him. And
Yeah,
said,
they don't.
If you want to make the label, we'll let you do that. And she says, I don't want to be the one. And finally she got a label, just slightly autistic, and was able to get some help. But what I found with my daughter, because we never had it anywhere in our family, we didn't see it a lot. They weren't in public school. There weren't a lot of them, at least that acted out in their school. But she just went and found all kinds of information everywhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of
And,
information.
She's now fostering children because she wanted another child and couldn't have one, and so she got 2 babies from the hospital that were drug babies and fetal alcohol syndrome, and she is reading everything I've seen there. She has more.
No, yeah.
But with my grandson, we went to VBS one time. I think he must have been 6, 7, maybe, and she came home and she said, oh, he was so bad. All he's doing is getting up and slamming the doors, slamming the door. You get into this repetitive type behavior.
Yeah, the repetitive.
And she said, I don't know whether to bring him back the next day or not, but they told me to bring him back. So she did the next day. And what was so funny is it was a teenager that was helping in the classroom. She came up to Jonathan when he walked in and she says, I brought you something. And he says, what? And she said, I brought you your own special door. And she made it out of cardboard, big size, and said, anytime you want to open the door, you open it. It doesn't make as much noise, so nobody will get angry. I couldn't believe it out of the mouths of the kids.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
and it's with the autistic people, their behavior isn't the same all the time.
Right.
No,
They go
it's
through these
changed.
phases of different
Yeah.
things. So
Anybody else have anything they want to share?
Question. I work in an after-school program, and not necessarily, I don't know this kid's label, but I think he might be Asperger's type of thing. I was wondering if you have any suggestion for me on how to address him, because from what I can see, most of these families that bring their kids in, they're either, the kids are having a bad home life with drugs and alcohol, or they're not Christian families anyway. And we're, the company that I work for isn't Christian based either, but
And you
so
can't
I'm
say
trying
anything.
to be as much of an encouragement as I can, but I have boundaries.
Yes, it's really
But
hard with
this
those
boy
boundaries.
particularly, we were told that he was bullied in his last facility. I don't really think he was bullied. I think it might have been come off that way because the kid is smart, but he doesn't retain direction or rules. You can tell him the same rule 15 times a day,
It's like a
and then he will turn right around right in front of you and do what you just told him not to do. And then when you correct him, he looks at you like deer in the headlights, like,
One thing that might help is visuals. If you have visuals of what the rules are, and then you can show him, and when he breaks one, point to it.
okay.
Then you don't have to talk. You're not arguing. You're
Mhm.
just pointing. One thing that helps one of our young boy now is to have a target, and he thinks he's on topic because he'll tell a story about Disney or a show that comes in the back door to what the goal is in the classroom. And so he was in my daughter's Sunday school class for quite a while, and I had the privilege of working with my daughter for 2 years in a readiness skills program, which was behavior, autism, it was a whole gamut. And that was a privilege. We prayed together every day. And so she got this idea, she was a Sunday school teacher, of doing a target, and she put in the middle what the target for the lesson was. And so if he started talking about princesses or mom or something way out here, she would just point here. And then he's like, oh, that's right. And I mean, you pre-teach this, hey, when we talk, if you're outside of what we're talking about, I'm going to point you here to remind you. And he catch himself and bring himself back to topic. Now, we have a young man that's working with him. There's a men's and ladies class right now. He is so excited. He's 14, so he gets to sit with men. And the other day, I'm like, so, are you going down to Sunday school? And I'm like, oh, great. Now he loses the Kindle because he has to be kind in order to earn the Kindle at the end of church. And what he was waiting for was that young man to come. He didn't want to go down to Sunday school until his buddy was there. And I didn't know, and he didn't know how to communicate it, but he has to do it kindly, because if he doesn't do it kindly, then he doesn't. So we have a whole behavior program, because I didn't put it together, but my daughter's like, hey mom, what if we do this? Does that sound good? Yeah, check with Tony. And so, and Tony's the special ed teacher. And so the other day, I said good morning to this student. They didn't say good morning. I said good morning, because I want the eye contact and I'm demanding you to talk to me. He goes, you witch. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we're happy. I said, okay. So, and another day, he's started this new stereotype. This is called the stereotypy. The big word, stereotypy. His new one is, and our auditorium echoes really good because it was built in the 1800s. And so the new plan is, if you can clap. Clapping is wonderful. We pre-taught him that when somebody sings or whatever, it's okay to clap. There are certain times you sing and certain times you don't, and it hurts people's ears. So if you need to clap, you can go out to this room, but you can't clap in the auditorium unless everybody else is clapping. If you do clap, when you get one reminder that, hey, this room is available for you. And that's what happened the other day. He was clapping and said, oh, so-and-so, if you want to clap, you need to you can go in the other room. You witch. I'm like, oh, great. Now he's lost the Kindle, and it's all because of me. So he and I have been having this little battle back and forth. But do you know what happened? After church, he comes up to me. He goes, Miss Betsy, will you forgive me? Is God growing him? Yes. Is it hard for him? Yes. He's witnessed improper treatment of women from his dad. And he thinks it's okay to treat his mom that way. Doesn't treat anybody at church that way. He doesn't treat anyone at school that way. So pray for him. And on that, anything else? I think we're probably way over time. Yeah, we are. So if anybody else wants, if you want to visit or whatever, I'd be glad to eat supper with you. But let's close in prayer. Since I didn't even start out, well, I was praying, but let's pray. Dear God, we just thank you and praise you for your word, and your word says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you knit us together. And thank you for your word and your promises, Lord, and thank you for the reminder of how much we need you daily, momentarily, and may our desires be to honor you with our lives. Father, I pray that the things that have been said that are helpful will remain, and those that don't reflect you or are not helpful will just dissipate. Father, I pray that thank you and praise you for the opportunity we have as ladies to meet together over your word and to encourage one another. In Jesus' name, amen.